Hi, my name's Alyssa, and this is my reflective journal for assessment task 3. I'd like to start off by acknowledging the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which I'm presenting today and pay my respects to elders both past and present. I acknowledge the importance of listening and learning from Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples and communities whose knowledge and connection to country continue to shape understanding, culture, and education. At the beginning of this unit, I realised that my understanding of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, cultures, and knowledges was extremely limited. One of the first things that challenged my thinking was learning the importance of language and terminology. Prior to this unit, I had never considered that referring to Indigenous peoples as a noun can be considered offensive, as it overlooks the diversity of First Nations communities across Australia. I now understand the importance of using such terms such as Aboriginal peoples or First Nations peoples to acknowledge the many different nations, cultures, and identities that exist. Although this may appear to be a small linguistic change, it reflects a much deeper recognition of cultural diversity and respect. This unit also deepened my understanding of the richness and complexity of Indigenous languages and cultures prior to colonisation. Before European colonisation, there were approximately 260 Indigenous language groups and over 800 dialects spoken across Australia. However, colonisation and assimilation policies disrupted the ability for many communities to continue speaking their traditional languages, contributing to the cultural loss and disconnection from identity. Price and Rogers explain the loss of language extends beyond words themselves, creating feelings of sadness, isolation, and disconnection with communities. This unit further challenged my understanding of colonisation and its ongoing impacts on First Nations communities. During my own schooling only a few years ago, colonisation was often presented as settlement, sounding quite peaceful and harmless. It was education from a largely Western perspective, with little discussion of frontier wars, violence, dispossession, or intergenerational trauma experienced by Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. Batiste and Henderson highlight how Eurocentric worldviews continue to privilege dominant Western knowledge systems while marginalizing Indigenous knowledges and perspectives. Reflecting on my education, I can now recognize how many Indigenous voices and historical realities were overlooked within the curriculum. This unit challenged my previous assumption that colonization is something that exists only in the past. Although physical colonization has largely ended, Indigenous peoples continue to experience the ongoing impacts of globalization, where dominant Western languages, values, and ways of thinking continue to marginalize Indigenous cultures and knowledges. This made me realize that colonization is not simply a historical event, but an ongoing reality that continues to affect many Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities today. Additionally, I've developed a deeper appreciation for Indigenous relationships with country and ecological knowledge systems. Indigenous worldviews recognize the inherent value of all living things and emphasize respect, sustainability, and interconnectedness with the environment. This reinforced for me that Indigenous knowledges are not outdated, but highly valuable and highly relevant within contemporary society. Reflecting on my own upbringing, I recognise that growing up in a predominantly non-Indigenous rural town in Victoria significantly shaped my previous worldviews and understanding of culture. During my schooling, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives were rarely embedded meaningfully within the curriculum, and most understandings came from westernised textbooks and perspectives. This unit challenged me to critically reflect on how dominant Western ideologies can shape understandings of culture, identity, and education. Although I do not identify as EAL/D or First Nations peoples, this unit encouraged me to reflect on my own experiences as a learner and how diversity extends beyond visible cultural differences. Throughout school, I often preferred creative and visual ways of learning, such as mind maps, collaborative tasks, and creative subjects, rather than just your traditional paragraph writing. Reflecting on this helped me understand that there is not one superior way to learn, communicate, or express knowledge. I recognize the importance of valuing the many different ways students think, learn, and connect with the world, and that no culture or way of knowing is superior to another. This unit also deepened my understanding of the experiences of EAL/D students and the importance of culturally responsive teaching practices. Multilingual learners bring such valuable cultural knowledge and perspectives into classrooms. Strategies such as group work, visual learning, storytelling, art, and collaborative activities can create more inclusive and accessible learning environments where students feel safe to express themselves in different ways. Through tutorial discussions and collaborative activities, I gained a greater appreciation for how diverse perspectives enrich learning and challenge assumptions. Additionally, this unit strengthened my understanding of the importance of language within Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities. Price and Rogers explained that language is central to cultural expression, identity, and belonging. Reflecting on this made me recognize the important role teachers play in creating culturally safe classrooms where Indigenous students feel comfortable sharing their stories, perspectives, and languages. Throughout this unit, I have developed a greater understanding of the importance of building genuine relationships and partnerships with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities. Experiencing storying and yarning within tutorials and assessment tasks too helped me recognize the value of learning directly from Indigenous peoples and communities rather than only through textbooks or Western perspectives. It reinforced for me that respectful partnerships begins with deep listening, connection, and willingness to learn. I now understand an important first step in building respectful relationships with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities is actively engaging as both a future teacher and citizen within local communities. Living close to the Royal Botanical Gardens in Melbourne, I often spend time walking through these gardens, and I'm currently looking to participate in the Aboriginal Heritage Walk led by First Peoples guides. I believe experiences and learning on country provide meaningful opportunities to connect with Aboriginal perspectives, histories, and knowledges directly from community members themselves. This unit taught me that one of the most powerful ways to deepen our understanding is through deep listening, storying, yarning, and learning on country. Additionally, with Reconciliation Week currently taking place, this unit encouraged me to reflect on how relationship building and learning should also extend beyond the classroom and into families and communities. Growing up in a predominantly non-Indigenous rural town in Victoria meant that many Indigenous perspectives were not openly discussed within my community. This has motivated me to continue engaging in community events and encourage conversations within my own family as a part of my ongoing learning journey. Throughout this unit, I have developed a deeper understanding of how culturally responsive pedagogy can create a more inclusive, respectful, and culturally safe learning environment. Learning about Gloria Ladson Billings' culturally responsive pedagogy framework particularly challenged me to reflect on the role teachers play in shaping students' is understanding of culture, identity, and belonging. This framework aligns strongly with AT3 standards 1.4 and 2.4, reinforcing the importance of understanding how students learn and embedding Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives respectfully within classroom practice. Key aspects of this approach, including being strongly connected, challenging dominant perspectives, supporting positive cultural identities, and acting as an advocate for equity, highlighted for me the importance of teachers actively contributing to reconciliation through everyday teaching practices. As a future teacher, I hope to create a classroom environment that challenges stereotypes, misinformation, and Eurocentric assumptions rather than positioning Western, Western perspectives as the only dominant discourse. I do not want students to feel they are being told what their worldview should be, but instead create opportunities for respectful discussion, yarning, and critical reflection, where students can engage with diverse perspectives and experiences. Creating non judgmental classroom spaces where students feel safe to share their own identities, cultures, and understandings can help foster positive cultural identities and encourage students to view both their own cultures and others' cultures as strengths and assets within the classroom and community. Additionally, learning about the 8 Ways Aboriginal Pedagogy framework reinforced for me that there is not one single right way to learn. Strategies such as storying, visual learning, collaboration, and community links provide valuable opportunities for students to learn in more inclusive and meaningful ways. Storying is designed for everybody in everyday life and crosses cultures and social classes. Through participating in yarning circles within tutorial classes, I experienced how storying can encourage deep listening, respectful discussion, and collaborative learning. I also strongly connect with approaches such as visual learning and mind maps, as these support students in visualizing pathways of knowledge and recognizing different ways of learning and expressing understanding. Community links are an important aspect of culturally safe pedagogy. As a future teacher, I hope to invite guest speakers and engage with local Indigenous communities where appropriate, allowing students to learn directly from Indigenous voices and perspectives rather than relying solely on second-hand interpretations. This unit reinforced the importance of ensuring Indigenous perspectives are embedded authentically and respectfully. Furthermore, recent discussions surrounding the booing of Welcome to Country ceremonies during Anzac Day events challenged me to reflect more critically on the importance of reconciliation within both schools but also the wider society. Even within my own family, these conversations highlighted how misunderstandings can often stem from limited education and engagement with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives. As both a future teacher and citizen, I aspire to contribute to reconciliation by encouraging respectful conversations, meaningful understanding, and culturally responsive practices both inside and outside of the classroom. Reflecting on this unit as a whole, I can recognize how much my understanding and positionality has developed throughout the semester. Growing up in a predominantly non-Indigenous rural community, I now realize how limited my exposure to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives was throughout my schooling and everyday life. This unit challenged many assumptions I previously held and reinforced the importance of ongoing listening, reflection, and learning. One of the biggest things I have learned is that culturally responsive teaching is not about ticking boxes or trying to speak on behalf of First Nations people, but instead about building genuine relationships, listening to Indigenous voices, and approaching teaching with humility and openness. As a future teacher and citizen, I understand the intercultural learning and reconciliation that intercultural learning and reconciliation are ongoing lifelong processes, and I hope to continue engaging with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities both personally and professionally throughout my career. Thank you.